Hello, I'm Michael Redmond, professional Nine Go player. The main tournament of the 29th Samsung Cup has started on November 12th. So there's 32 players, first round of the main tournament. White is Zihao. He's a world champion. He won the Samsung Cup, that's this tournament, in 2017. And I think that was his first international win. And he continued to be a top player. So he's still one of the top players in the world. CHOI Jeong is one of the top female players. She's been the top Korean player for quite a while. 2 years ago, in 2022, she went to the final of this tournament. So she was finalist in the 2022 Samsung Cup, and she finally lost to Shinjinso. And that was when Shinjinso was pretty much invincible. And we're going to look at an opening that's very popular in this era of AI research. So it's Black has played Shimari from the star point instead of a 3-4 point. So that makes it a bit unusual from the old style view. And again, Black's going to be playing this move instead of a pincer. So that makes this a modern opening. We'll also be looking at a double Kakari Joseki in the top left corner. Okay, just to get started now. So this is a position where before AIs, we would be thinking of maybe a Chinese opening or a Shimari in the lower right corner. And so when Black played Shimari from the star point, this was more modern than that. And no pincer. At this point, White does have a lot of choices. Even when people research the game with AIs, you can see, for instance, this move. Of course, White could have just extended, and this is the way people do it nowadays. On the fourth line, White could play here and then extend on the fourth line. In this opening, Black has two fairly solid positions and is probably going to go for the territory. So in general, Black's going for territory in this game, and White's going to end up making a moyo somewhere probably. So in the game, White played a high Kakari, and this can develop into a fight on the right side. So if Black kicks immediately, for instance, and Black's going to play some kind of a pincer. So it's either this one or this one. It's sort of hard to choose. In the game, Black played a Kakari here. So my understanding of this move is that if White answers, maybe it's going to be good to have this Kakari played. So the exchange of those two stones in the top right, in a position like this, I have the feeling that maybe Black's gained a little by playing that exchange at f17 for White c14. So maybe it's better for Black to have that stone on the board. It's probably a very subtle difference. That could be the idea, though. And White played away. So by playing the attachment and the double honey here, White's going to settle the position on the right side. So Black lost an opportunity to attack on the right side of the board, but is going to get a double Kakari in the top left. So that's an even trade. So Black plays the double Kakari. And we're going to see a Joseki that's very popular nowadays. So White plays the attachment and extends, and Black plays this attachment. So this attachment, I'd sort of say that it depends on the ladder. So if White cuts here, Black will probably just connect here. And the fact that the ladder favors Black makes this a good variation for Black. If White could capture in a ladder here, then it would be a good variation. Usually this is a good variation for White. But of course, in this board position, Black's going to be able to run out. So that makes it bad for White. So White covered on the 3-3 point, and Black connected. So White has various choices at this point. So this is where you should probably have two Josekis at least to choose from. The game move was here, the strongest local fighting move. And the other main choice would be this one. So in this case, White's going for a more peaceful trade, you might say. Usually Black's just going to push through here and take the corner territory. So in this case, the cut at B18 would be Miai with white's extension here. Black does have some Maji with this. Asking how white's going to deal with that. White can cut at G17 or white can kick at H16. And so we have a variation, something like this. It's a Joseki, so it's an even result in the top left. I'd say in general, it's a good way for white to play if white wants to keep things relatively simple and peaceful. In this board position, it's working fairly well for black because the fact that white has established a strong position on the top side means that it sort of gives a cue for black to defend the top right. So playing here comes very naturally. And when black does defend the top right, that weakens white's group in the top right. So white needs some kind of move added to the right side. So otherwise, black's going to attack very strongly there. So any move on the right side is feasible, but let's say white plays here. And everything is very well settled in this game. There's not really any extremely weak groups. And that works well with black's invasion of the 3-3 point, which is going to try to take some more territory. So overall, I think it's sort of the flow of stones is very natural and works fairly well for black. But this, in general, is one of the Joseki choices that white had. So in the game, white played the connection, and black played the kosumi. This Joseki has been with us for a long time, and black is sort of threatening to push through at d15, but with the white stones, you don't really have to worry about that very much. So white pushed here. Katago liked this move. It seemed to be the optimal move. White doesn't have to worry very much about this. So first of all, white's group in the corner is actually fairly difficult to kill. But there's also the fact that once black pushes through at 1, black's filled his own liberty, and white can cut at 4. So it's going to be bad on the outside. And so there can be variations where black finally does manage to capture the corner, and is still going to be bad for black. So cutting at 4 is a very valuable move. It means that black has to defend there before pushing through at 1. And even if black does push through and cut there, the white group is going to be alive. So black jumped out. So when black jumps out here, black's trying to attack on a larger scale. So this is a very valuable move that by creating a pushing move at e13, it is helping black's group on the left side there, and it's reinforcing black's top side. So going back to this point, although Katago liked this move, I'm going to say in general that when this Joseki happens in the top left, my advice to most players would be to jump here. And that's because this move reinforces white's 2 stones in the center, and it means that this weakness here is going to be even less of an issue. So for the time being, it's out of the question because white's going to cut at 5. But even after black defends this point, let's say white invades the top side, this is going to turn into a fight. But when black plays here, it's still fairly difficult for black to attack the corner. So the corner is, for instance, if white plays here, it's pretty much as good as alive. So like in positions like this, you can say that there's a potential ko here. But black stands to lose a lot if black loses this ko. So it's actually equally dangerous for black as it is for white. And you don't really worry about this ko until maybe much later in the game when you have a better idea of ko threats and stuff like that. Sometimes it becomes a problem. But for the time being, that cut is not a problem provided white's strong on the outside. So this move at 1 is reinforcing white's group on the outside, on the top, and it's making me eye of the left side and the top side. So I showed you white invading the top side. That would be a running fight. Or if black defends the top side, white could play on the other side. Maybe on the 4th line. And something like this. So you can see again how the stone at 1 is helping by making a connection when white plays at 7. So it's still working, and it's still creating a fairly strong group for white towards the center. So that would be my idea in this position. In the game, white pushed here. So that's a big move too. And white played 1 shoulder hit, and black answered that. And now white cut here. So I didn't like this move. And that's because white is adding a stone. It's, as far as territory is concerned, it's actually a very big move. But it's adding a stone to a white group that was strong already. So I didn't like that move. And it turns out AlphaGo had a different suggestion. So I'm going to show you that. White should have peeped here and played here. So this really makes sense because this would, again, it would kind of make a living shape. As I was saying before, there is this ko here, which is, in a way, it's more dangerous for black than it is for white. So it's not a big issue at this stage of the game. And so this would locally live for the white group, and it would mean that white would not have to push out into the center, which would be moves. So to show you the game variation, pushing out into the center tends to be moves that are playing dame points, or in other words, white's playing moves that do not really connect to making any white territory when white has to push out into the center. And of course, black's getting to extend on the fourth line. So black's getting a good territory on the left side of the board, while white is playing moves that don't make any territory. A situation that I don't like to get into with white. So that's why I like this move, just to show you once more, where white avoids that by getting a local life. And white doesn't really care what happens on the outside now, because it's just an issue of, maybe it's just an issue of what happens to these two stones, which are not so big. And so white can afford to sacrifice those. So I like this variation. In the game, white cut here and jumped. So the cut is partly justified because it adds force to this jump. So the black group has to be careful there because it doesn't have any eyes. So black played here and white played here. So this is the shape move. It's a way for white to reduce a black area. White could have played more strongly like this, and this would be making use of that stone at Q17 to try to attack the black group. So black could make a life by cutting here and making an eye there. Then black would be alive on the top side, and white would play like this. This would take away black's base on the top side, and in this case, while this white group was forced to play moves towards the center, which were not making very much territory, now black's going to have to do the same. So it's going to turn into a running fight with this black group and these two white groups. They're all fairly, none of them are safe really, but at least both sides will be playing points that don't make much territory towards the center. So I'm sort of calling them dame points. That might be a bit too strong a way to call it, but yeah. There's also the fact that white's stone at 7, it works to make this a forcing move. So it's added insurance for white's connection out into the center. Okay, so in the game, white just played lightly, and black got to surround the top territory. And this is an opening that actually looks fairly good for black. It's going to be a close game, but it's a good start for black. So white had to defend the right side. That's really big. And with this move and this wall here, which is sort of extending out into the center, is sort of difficult for black to break through that line that I've just written down. So it means the white has a pretty high wall there, which is reinforcing white's area on the right side. So most of this area, it's going to be difficult for black to invade very deeply. White doesn't have any other territories, so it's just the right side. And so black will be able to give white that on a small scale, hopefully, while black has territories elsewhere on the board. Another shoulder hit. White could have crawled. That would have been a move. I'm not sure what black's going to do. So black could jump here, and that would be an even exchange maybe. Or black could play here, which was always a big move. This would be reinforcing this area for black, and it would be putting pressure on the white's group here. So white would probably answer that by jumping out. And white's group, since it doesn't have eyes, so provided black does not, actually cutting here actually helps white. But if black doesn't do that, white doesn't have any eyes in the corner. So white can get one eye in the corner, so not two eyes. So what I was saying here is that if black pushes through and cuts here, it's actually pretty difficult for black to kill this white group. So let's just explore that. If black protects here immediately, it's going to be a ko anyway. So there's going to be a ko here. And this ko is also a bit dangerous for black because when white wins it, if white gets to capture at this point, that's going to be threatening to cut at C13. So that would be That's a dangerous go for black too. Or if black peeps in the corner first, so this would be the tsumego tesuji. So like this. This is going to be a ko. So if black extends down here, this variation is a seki. So going back to black 16 here, black would play here, and it's going to be some kind of a ko. So if black pushes through at 4 and cuts at 6, it's actually more difficult to kill the white group. But if black manages to surround this white group from the outside, then white doesn't have 2 eyes in the corner. Okay, so instead of crawling against black's shoulder hit, white attached and cut. So this is a tesuji we see where white is sort of trying to squeeze while defending the corner. And black played here. This is also a tesuji we see a lot with black, where black is trying to manage the squeeze. So if white plays here and here, white does get to defend the corner. But in this variation, there's some aji with black's free later in the game. And white's shape is sort of clumped up and bad shape. So it's a clumpy shape that's not so good for white. And black does have some aji in the corner. So this is the variation that black is sort of aiming at. And white extended here. So this is a good shape move. If black were to play something like this now, then basically white got some stones towards the center instead of getting a stone towards the corner. So white has better shape on the outside in this variation. Black could have played once here, and if white extends, then black would probably play here in actual play, and this would lead to a different fight. In the game, black just played here immediately, allowing white to capture in a ladder. And black curled around. So this is breaking the ladder. If white were to just simply answer here, this would temporarily surround that white group. So this could be a problem for white. It's not 100% clear, but it's going to be a tough fight for white to play this way. So white played the knight's move. So this is a very sort of a painful shape locally, but the fact that this general area is not going to be very much territory for anyone anyway probably makes it okay for white to play that move in this case. Okay, so yes, so white peeped here. This is making a threat against black's area on the top side. So of course it's, in a way, it's defending white's group in the top left, but there's also a threat towards the top side, which is if black plays away, white can play, play here. And this would disrupt black's area on the top side. So if black pushes through and cuts, white wins the semi. So that was easy enough. So black answered here. So this was an active way for black to react to that threat. And it was interesting. Black extended here and took sente. So that was one way for black to do it. Locally, it would actually have been better for black to play here, as far as territory was concerned. And by getting some more territory there, the exchange would be that white would get a bit of a squeeze from the center. So like this. So by getting some extra profit there, black would be simplified in the game, sort of. So this would happen, and then something towards the bottom side. So this variation. And black seems to have a small lead. So this would be a more pacific way, less fighting potential, and keeps the center simple and light. So there's nothing happening in the center, which means that there won't be so many issues for black when black moves towards white's area on the right. So this was an option. So in the game, black played here, trying to put pressure on white's group on the left. But it doesn't really amount to much. So it could be that black was overdoing it with this double hane, partly because black doesn't have any very much potential towards the center. So Katago wants black to play here. It's a good time for black to ask the question, how does white react to this? Because if white connects here, black gets to peep here. So this would be a good reaction to white's move here, because this is kind of a double peep. And so in this variation where white defends by capturing the 1 stone and black gets to cut at 5, that exchange for 1 and 2 was a good exchange for black. So it's taking away some of white's eye space and giving black some extra profit in the corner. So that exchange of black 1 for white 2 was good. On the other hand, if white connects on this side, this is going to be trouble for white too, because black can save these 3 stones and it's going to cut white in 2. So white's probably going to capture here. So assuming something like this, black gets to surround the bottom side. And this would also be a fairly good variation for black. And again, the idea, as in the previous diagram, the idea is to keep things relatively peaceful. And to make it easier, because of that, it's slightly easier for black to reduce white's area on the right side of the board later in the game. So this actually became a bit heavy for black, because the white group is fairly strong. So white played here, and we got into this variation, which was not so bad. It might have been even better for white to extend here. So this would be a stronger move, and white's group on the left, it's pretty strong anyway. So white has 1 eye there at d7. And if black were to extend here, but white has 1 eye here and has a forcing move here, which could make an eye at d5. Also, white has a potential eye on the second line here. So white's pretty much alive already. So black's probably not going to even pull out at 4. Maybe we see a variation, something like that. This would be more active for white, putting pressure on black in the center because of that cut at g10, and taking more space towards the right side. So this would be more challenging. And the game white played solidly. I get the feeling the game is pretty close however they play it, but this was maybe a bit too passive. And black got to defend the bottom side. So black's territories are fairly well defined at this point. Territory on the top side. There's some endgame on the left side, but it's pretty well defined, the border of black's territory. And after black is defended here at k4, the bottom side is probably going to be a black territory. So white attached and cut here. So this is a Tetsuji, where if black answers like this, white can play another Tari here. And so this would be a ko-like position where white's just trying to play some forcing moves to press black down and expand white's area on the right side. And this would be the same idea where white would get some extra forcing moves. This would be a good exchange for white, even if white just left it after that. So black extended towards the corner. So this is the strongest local move. For the time being, black doesn't really have to worry about this move very much because white's missing a move at p2. So eventually we'll have to go back there. And this is damaging white's area on the right side. So white's not really gaining very much in this variation. And white didn't do that immediately. However, the aji related to white's stone at q2, there's a lot of aji there. So it does sort of slow down black's attack on the right side. So this was big because it established a little area here. So it settled the white group in the top left by sort of connecting up in the center here. And it got rid of that marked cutting point. So let's do a diagram for that. If black cuts here, well, it's a ko shape. But even if white doesn't do the ko, this is really bad for black. So white's going to live in the corner. There's a cut at J17. And on the whole, it's just not working. So there's no cut there. And black played here. So this got rid of all the aji in the lower right corner. And because of that, black can invade somewhere around here next. So this would be a very strong invasion when black has this strong position in the corner. So white played here. So that's stopping black from invading at r7 and bringing white's position up to the 5th line, sort of making a barrier there. And the whole thing is the question of how far black can get in here. So that's the problem. And with this stone on the P line, on the 5th line from the right side of the board, creating a barrier, it's making it just that much more difficult for black to come in. So black came in on the 6th line, threatening to jump in at the 4th line and keeping some distance. So that was probably a good move, and black jumped here. So with this move, black is defending the 3 stones here. So these 3 stones, so it's a few extra points, and also looking at the jump here, which would sort of link out to the center. So the idea is that black is going to play that exchange and then run away with the stone in the center. So that exchange of 0-15 for white 1, it gained a few points for black. Okay, so white played this forcing move, and black played here. So this is a beautiful tesuji. First of all, the idea is if white captures here, now this is going to be an issue because white's, so for instance, in a variation like this, white would be running out of eye space. So in this case, white doesn't have 2 eyes. So in some cases that could become an issue. And it would be losing territory anyway. So white sort of wants to capture the stone, and this created this forcing move, which is threatening to push through here. So this would be painful. And because of that, black has established a potential capture of these 2 white stones. So later on, black can go after these 2 white stones. Right now, white is threatening black to invade black's territory on the bottom side. And also there's some stuff in the center that still has to happen. So black can't quite do it yet, but would like to be able to get to that point at some point. So black's created that potential and then attached here. So black's trying to create issues for white in the center of the board, so that black can get to that final big point in the lower left corner. The rest of the board is pretty much well filled up. So the center and the lower left corner are the 2 points of interest at this stage of the game. So black has finished the bottom side now, and at some point is going to run out with this stone. So there's some potential issues with a move like this or a move like this. There's some bad aji in the white area there. White played here, and black jumped out. With this move, white is defending the top left area, so making some territory there, the top left part of the center, and making a threat against the black stones floating about in the center. So all of those stones are, the connection is not very well defined. So there's some weakness there. But Jed probably knew that she had to play actively because black really needs to get to that e5 capture. So that's what's happening with this move. And black is still looking at something happening, either this move or maybe this move in the bottom right. So looking at that, and white protected. So this is reasonable. In this variation of naturally the exchange of these 2 mark points, it became a bad exchange for black. So white's gaining from that, although it did cost white a move. And black played here, and white bumped against. This is locally a very strong move. Looks like white's trying to kill or something. So there's that peep at N11, which we'll see in the game. White could have played here. This would be the more peaceful way, and it would be sort of waiting. So this would be an attempt to make miai of an attack in the center and defending at e5. So for instance, if black plays some kind of defensive move, then white would be able to defend here. So this would be a success for white. In the game, the center fight is heating up a bit. And this was a very good move, which sort of posed an attack against white's area in the top left part of the center. And when white peeped here, which is the strong move that white was aiming at, white was sort of heading towards this move when white bumped against here. So this is the strong attack that white had. But black was ready to trade. So black's got some extra profit towards the top left part of the center, taking that area away from white, and white has captured some black stones on the right half of the center. Locally, it's an even trade, but in this variation, it's black's going to get the tempo. Black's going to get sente to move to the bottom left area. White had to defend the top left group. Here, black is squeezing, and depending on what happens in this corner, black will be able to pull out here. So that would mean that black would be able to pull out here, making me have connecting to the center and connecting to the top right corner. So white has to be careful about that. And that's what this Atari was doing. So in this variation, white has established a forcing move here, which is cutting black stones off in the center. So black sacrificed the stones on the right side of the center, but black got sente. So at this point of the game, it's just very close, and I don't know. Turns out that this captured the two white stones, and that was really big. And with this move, so there's a lot of bad aji on the bottom side, but it looks like it was captured. So white cuts here. If black had connected, then this would have been a ko in the corner. So this is a tetsuji. It's worth knowing to crawl here and to cut. And then the Atari on the first line. So if black extends, it's going to be this ko. Or if black takes, it's going to be this ko. It's not a direct ko, but it's a very dangerous ko for black. And black took the one stone. And it looks like this was dead. So at this point, the game is very close. When I checked with Katoko, it seemed to think that black was half a point ahead. But it's a very close game. And they have something like 100 moves of endgame to play from here on. Let's just look through the game. So I'm not really going to be saying someone lost a point or gained a point, because it's at this stage of the game, it's very difficult to know. And yeah, it's sort of beyond me. So I'm just going to follow the sequence here. In the center there, white is sort of eyeing the bad aji there on the bottom side. And there's a potential attack against the black group on the left side there. And white's sort of threatening a ko in the corner sometimes. And black added a stone. So this pretty much cooled things down. And I'd say when black got this living shape on the left side, it was probably a fairly straightforward endgame after this. Still difficult, but fairly straightforward. White did have to add a stone there, so that worked well for black. And it was close throughout. So it was close. In the end, black won by half a point. So maybe black won in the end game. It's very hard for me to say, actually. And so they're finished. So they're finishing, just filling the dame at this point. And black won by half a point. So CHOI Jeong, she won her first round. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, she has been to the final of this tournament. So it'd be interesting to see how well she does. So there will be more Samsung Cup games, and I'll be back. Thank you for watching to the end.